Obviously, a lot of you guys pay attention to the world around me, so I thought I'd just mention some quick thoughts on the trial in case you missed them. I was found not guilty, so I was acquitted on 5 counts of the 8 counts indictment. That was very exciting news. In fact, when I heard the first 2 acquittals, I thought for sure there'd be 8 in a row, but it turns out I was wrong. So I was found guilty on 3 of 8 accounts, which makes me a convicted felon, which is sort of an amazing thing. I don't think I'd ever, in a million years, thought that would happen to me, but so be it. The government had a very insane theory that money was taken from Retrophin and given to my hedge fund investors. They were proven wrong by a very smart jury. I'm thrilled that the jury sort of popped the government's bubble very loudly. That was the government's big overarching claim that that's the reason they did this. So I'm very happy that was proven wrong. But that was the good news. The bad news is the fund investors were found to be misled, although they made 2 to 5 times their money. And that's without any of the allegedly, how should I put it, allegedly improper settlements. So it's a pretty good return for those investors. I was kind of happy that we spent all of this time talking about how much money my investors made. I was gratified to see that. And most importantly, I made $31,000 over 4 years, which is about $7,000 or $8,000 a year. I think most people here know that's not a lot of money for working around the clock all day and all night. I think you guys see my work ethic even here on a Sunday. I worked probably harder in those days. So this big bad illegal scheme was all to make me $31,500. So it doesn't feel very fair, but that's life. I will say that not all of the facts and evidence were available for the trial. We've uncovered new facts and new evidence since the start of the trial that we will present that are even more compelling. I think the government broke a lot of rules and procedures and even laws in order to get this indictment, not the least of which is manipulating witnesses and threatening witnesses and doing all kinds of nasty things. So I think in appeal and in some post-trial motions, there's some chance of getting rid of these 3 accounts. I think one of them for sure will go down. So the remaining 2, we'll see. Maybe they'll win on appeal. Maybe I won't. But assuming I won't, the United States sentencing guidelines would suggest 0 to 6 months of incarceration, which I think is a pretty good outcome. I think the government tends to, when they feel like they want to incarcerate you, they use the criminal justice apparatus to do so. And I think I largely have sort of defeated the government. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being a complete acquittal and 10 being a complete conviction, I think we scored a 2. Now, of course, I wanted to score 1, but this was as close as one could get to a full blowout victory. We're just 1 step short of that. So, it's a mixed outcome for sure, but I think I'm pretty happy with it. So, we'll move on. Second week of earnings season. Biggest story in the market was Teva. Teva stock plummeting on bad earnings and a bad outlook. A little bit surprising. The generics business has been struggling for some time, so this was a really big reaction. The stock went from 33 to 20. I want to say that's a 35-ish% decline. Teva also has a gigantic Venezuelan business, believe it or not, and you think that they would have written that off, or that would have been sort of in expectations already, but it's not. So the real reason Teva is down a lot is they leveraged up quite a bit to buy Allergan's generic business. So not only were they already kind of in trouble for being the world's biggest generic drug maker, but they borrowed $30 billion to become even bigger. So there's actually a chance that Teva will have to deeply restructure their business or even file for bankruptcy. So if you look at let's take a look at some of the debt and see how the debt's traded. But you can see the bonds have dropped. The yields are starting to go up. I'd probably short these bonds, or at least short the stock and maybe buy these bonds as a hedge. But it's definitely a mess. And a lot of people want me to look at it and see if it's potentially worth buying. I think the problem with stocks like this is if you look at their, let's take a look very briefly. If you look at the enterprise value is $55 billion, even though the market cap is $22 billion. So basically, this is a company run by debt. The equity is worth less than the debt, which anytime you're in a situation like this, I think you play the debt. I don't think it makes sense to look at the equity anymore. That was the case with Valiant. That's the case with a few other companies. Obviously, you want to look at both, but you have to really start thinking about looking at the debt instead of the equity. With respect to the numbers, again, it's somewhat hard to really understand what's going on, but you can see that the EBITDA is pretty serious EBITDA of about $6 billion or so in EBITDA. Now that EBITDA is going to be dropping. It could be 10 times EBITDA or something like that, which is not really cheap at all, given the potentially there's sort of systemic sort of challenges to the generic business. Pfizer, Allergan, Sanofi all reported in line. Sanofi and Regeneron reported a $29 million Dupixent first quarter. Dupixent is the dupilumab, the new eczema drug that I think could be one of the biggest drugs of all time. This isn't a terrible quarter. It's sort of not a huge number for a drug that you would hope would be the biggest drug ever, but it still doesn't mean that it can't be one of the biggest drugs ever. I think it could, even with that number. Antibodies sort of take time to go up, and you just add more and more patients every quarter. So, it's I think most people think it'll be a multi-billion-dollar drug, but the idea that it would be a $5 or $10 billion drug may be out of the picture now. But either way, I still like Regeneron stock. Allergan's Linzess, or Ironwood's Linzess, had a bad quarter, so Ironwood dropped pretty nicely. It's a short I just put on. I think the stock can go lower to maybe $10, so we'll see what happens there. Apple obviously had a huge quarter. Again, this episode will be a little shorter just because I had so much going on last week that I didn't get a chance to look at the markets last night, and I had a big celebration party last night, which cut into my ability to work, including this morning. So it'll be a somewhat short call. Anyway, Stamps.com had an enormous quarter, and the stock went to over 200, which it probably shouldn't be at. But if you guys were looking at the earliest investing lessons, I think there were 10 or 20 of them that I did, 15 or 20, I should say.